Welcome to session 3 of our course,
quick recap.
Faithful Citizen. Sure, last time we talked about community, covenant. What was the third thing?
Common good.
Common good.
Common good, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Well, that's another C.
Yeah.
I know you talked about it, but I don't know if that was your third.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
And common good.
So we're on 3 today.
No, I think we're going to do second part of session 2. This way it's set.
And so we focused on that, and we talked some about we did quite a bit of kind of review. Oh, and then with regard to common good, we talked about what do we think is right. And we talked about the difference between equality, where everybody's standing on a box, same size box, or equity, where everybody has the box that they need. And then Michelle was just reminding me, we asked at the end of the class, the question was,
how do you look at situations where you know people have needs? I know some people will use the system and other people really have needs. Where do you come down on that? How do you make that?
since the person who asked the question isn't here today, we'll let that hang.
Come back to it.
Okay. Anything else you want to say by way of a brief review or overview to this point? All right, then today, in chapter 2, we're going to move a little more into economics, because citizenship involves economics. It involves the economy, whether it's a bull market or a bear market. It involves jobs. It involves economic policy, both local, national, and increasingly global. It is certainly in the news this week with President Trump at the United Nations saying, "We believe in America first, and all you other countries ought to believe in your country first. Take care of your own." And so pulling us out of agreements that had been more global in nature for the sake of the national. So it's timely that we should be talking about economics and what it means to be a faithful citizen when it comes to economics. Let's turn to James. We've been reading in James for the month of September. James chapter 1, that's in the New Testament, right after the letter to the Hebrews. James chapter 1, verse 27. If you've got a red Bible, it's on page 229 in the New Testament. Remember, this is the book that Luther thought one of the books that Luther thought the Bible would be better off without. The reason for that is that Luther, in his historical context, was so focused on justification by grace through faith in Christ, that he was very leery about the language, we are justified by grace through faith in Christ for good works. So, and because James assumes justification by grace through faith in Christ, and then talks a lot about good works, Luther was of the opinion this muddies the water. Somebody read James 1:27 for us, please.
Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unsustained by the world. Okay, so the Bible has a lot to say about money and the poor and economics. In fact, the Bible has more to say about the money and poor and economics than it has to say about the forgiveness of sins, believe it or not, as central as that is. Jesus does not back away from talking about money or the poor, and our confirmation students, in one of their lessons, memorized that God has a special affection for the poor and people in need. A special love. Why? Because they need more help. I've talked before about how there really is payback a lot of times, isn't there? Here, 3 Lund boys and 4 granddaughters now in the family. Huh? In my family, 4 boys, 5 grandchildren, 4 girls, and 1 boy. So things kind of even out. Well, when I was growing up, my mom was the parent who was responsible for helping anybody who needed help with their homework. She spent more time with my brother Jeff than she did with me or Dick. I think with Bill, although by the time Bill was in school, I was gone or not paying attention. She spent more time with Jeff with his homework because he needed more help. And so God has a special affection for the poor because they need more help. Poor people need more help. And so God is committed to helping the poor. We live now in a global economy. I mean, that is no secret. We live in a global economy. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think? That we live, where were you last week, Dan?
France.
In France, all right? Is it a good thing or a bad thing that we now live in a global economy?
Some of us believe in international trade.
Okay? Some of us
Not
believe
everyone
it.
does.
Not everybody does. Okay, fair enough.
Well, I would think it would help with the communication and perhaps make a more peaceful world.
If we're trading with another nation, chances are the relationship will be better than if we are
Not trading.
boycotting. Okay?
You talked about trading, but then we get to the side of where we're giving. I mean, you want to help the needy. So where is your need, your first concern for needy? The local or the national or the global? I mean, those of us who can give, how do we want to see that we're helping someone we know? Or does it, there's so many different ways to help the poor.
Mm-hmm.
So by giving, are we setting up a dialogue, which could be good, but are we inspiring them to produce more, to help themselves? So there's all kinds of ways to look at that global economy.
Well, when you said not everybody thinks that international trade is a good thing, who wouldn't think that international trade is a good thing?
Well, your auto worker from Detroit.
Somebody whose job now has moved outside of the United States.
So a miner from the Iron Range might not, someone in mining might not.
Yep, they're all without work now.
Pretty tough.
Howard?
Pretty tough to consider someone an enemy when they're feeding you.
Yeah.
If they know where the food is coming
Yeah.
from.
Right.
Right.
And if they get the food we think we're sending to them.
That's
because
part of
the-
your question.
The bureaucratic system won't let it go through.
So don't bite the hand that feeds you.
I know.
think too, we use the word trade, but trade sounds very equal, like I'll trade you this and that.
Yeah.
A lot of times the trade is very imbalanced, and that's
Right.
where you have the,
Taxes and tariffs and things like that.
well, we might sell very little to China, but then we get so much from China, there's so much imbalance, and we put
A
people out of work here.
trade deficit.
The
Yeah.
deficit causes unemployment here. So what we're saving when we buy their products, we also have to fund the people that aren't working. So the tariffs now kind of help equalize that a little.
And why do jobs move outside the United States?
Lower wages.
Lower wages, less restrictive environmental laws, right? And that's why you travel, one of the reasons, right? So there are all kinds of ways to look at this, and it might just be that whether we are in favor of global trade or not depends upon our perspective. You know, a recession is when somebody else loses their job. A depression is when I lose my job, right, or something like that. Seems to me we've heard that kind of talk. Well, so we're thinking about economics locally, nationally, and globally. Let's look in the student, in your book at page 21. Because I think that's about what the author says, page 21.
I don't have a 21.
You don't have a 21?
No, mine
She
only
doesn't have the
goes
second.
to 13. Huh?
Is it in a pocket?
No?
Well, I didn't do a very good job putting that
Oh,
together.
no, I made a mistake. Oh, my
That was made overseas.
Okay.
That's outdoors.
I know.
They use lead paint on that.
Styrene.
Globalization is potentially a positive thing in that it removes traditional barriers that have existed among countries. As worldwide markets for goods increases, there's more competition, and thus potentially prices stay lower and inflation is less a risk. Third world countries can benefit because more money is flowing into those places due to increased global trade. Thus, globalization can mean a higher standard of living for more people because of increased productivity and a diverse market, and cultural exchange can bring new ideas and innovation. Pluses. Critics of international free trade point out that lower trade barriers have led to unintended harmful effects, such as outsourcing jobs, the suppression of wages, the neglect of safety and environmental standards. While companies downsize, merge, and restructure, the benefits are often unbalanced. People in North America and Europe face pay cuts and job loss as factories are built overseas. Corporations may begin to rule the world, so to speak, since major companies better capitalize on global markets than small businesses. Also, cultural exchange may be bad too if negative influences begin to change societies. Thoughts, comments? I mean, that's what we were just talking about, right? Okay,
About changing societies.
Howard?
The Chinese want to be us.
They do and they don't.
Yeah. They'd like to have the standard of living that we have, is what I...
Right, right. When Michelle and I went to East Germany and then to Vienna in 1987,
Right before the wall came down.
it said on my passport that I was a pastor. When we took a bus, you know, like the Austrian trailways, when we took a bus from Prague, or from Vienna to Prague for the weekend, at the Czech border, I and another pastor were escorted off the bus and hassled for an hour and a half. Why? Because they were looking to see if we were smuggling Bibles into the country. So, they don't, you know, sometimes a country wants to emulate some things, but not, you know, not everything. Who would think that a pastor on vacation would have a Bible?
They were,
Huh?
they were communists at the time.
Right, they were communists at the time, yes. If I got this right, there's a short clip on the DVD for us to watch. This would be an appropriate time for prayer.
For miracles?
Yes.
Don't we have to turn that on too?
It's on.
You did.
Oh, it is?
You can hit the light screen.
Okay.
Take-
Oh, do you want to do the side?
Give me the lower lights.
Try the other one.
I know. It's not doing anything. Well,
You turn it to the side.
Punch the button and dial it.
There you go.
So she is treatable.
Gee, I can't even turn a light on, let alone work with that
She's
stuff.
a quick learner, Kareem.
Thank you.
Exactly. Without a two-way.
Who said prayer doesn't work? There's direction.
Can you turn it down a little bit?
What?
Thank you.
Is that our anthem at
Thank you.
offering?
There's not a picture.
That's coming?
No, is the projector set to the DVD input?
Yeah, 'cause it was last week. Well, picture in your mind a Walmart store with the lowest prices in town. That's what we should be looking at, right? And shoppers pouring in and out.
Central signal.
It's a short thing. That's what we just saw. Where do you shop? Do you like Walmart because prices are cheap? Do you like Cub or Aldi's? Or do you shop at Nolan's? Do you shop at,
Target, because they employ locally.
okay, or Sam's, or Costco? Do you go to the local lumberyard, or do you pick through the 2x4s at Menards? Where do you shop? Do you shop local, or do you shop big box as often as you
Tell me
can?
where that local lumberyard is.
They aren't anymore,
They aren't.
right? Shearer
Yeah.
is probably the only local lumberyard left.
Where are they?
Mount
So, huh, Mounds View?
Yeah, 1035W.
Oh, you can go in there? I thought that was kind of a
I think you can still go in there.
Okay.
There's something up on the, oh, it's going out now.
Forest Products
Oh,
on 61, you can find hardwood.
Yep.
So, when we drive 29, Highway 29 in Wisconsin, you can see some of the downtowns that used to be thriving in Stanley and Cadott and Boyd and Abbotsford, and now in Monaga outside of Camp Emmaus, and then Park Rapids. You know, it used to be that they all had a clothing store and a drug store and a hardware store, and now what's happened? Walmart has moved in. First it was Pomida, now Pomida's out of business because Walmart has moved in, and the downtowns are not downtowns anymore, you know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? This is you know, in terms of economy, you and I know these are the kind of questions that we face every day. Thoughts about that?
I was looking for a new floor lamp, and everything seemed to be made in China. So I like to support local. So if I need a gigantic thing, I'll go to Home Depot. I will go to my Ace hardware store down on Payne Avenue when I need something smaller and I know they have it and will help me. Because I don't go to Menards because the guy was very rude to me, and I said, I don't need service like that. So you pick it up. You know where you want to go. So if I can do local, I like to eat at local restaurants because I get tired of the big chains. Let's support the locals. That's my feeling.
Is that Italian restaurant still there on?
No.
On
Arcade? No.
They're gone?
They're gone, and it says Asian street food, but I've never seen anyone there.
Okay.
Romulo's, you mean?
Yes.
Romalos.
Romalos, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I used to be there on,
That's Scott's
Sherwood and Payne.
Wheelock Parkway.
No, Sherwood and Payne.
Yeah,
Lot
that closed.
south.
Well, now I can't turn off.
It's on my street, Sherwood.
Sherwood and Arcade,
Yes,
not Payne.
that's right. Thank you.
True or false? We no longer live in a society with lifetime employment. Fewer pension funds, higher health care costs and deductibles and premiums. True or false? True. True? Okay. What do we mean by lifetime employment?
Since you got a job when you either got out of school or out of college or out of the military or the government service, and you got a job and you stayed there until you retired and you got a pension.
And there was a contract of sorts, or a covenant between the employer and the employee. Huh? You work hard for us, we'll see to your needs.
I think the unions were stronger also.
Myrna?
I think the unions were stronger also, had more impact.
Okay.
But if you look at history, that period of time, what is relatively short.
Was a golden age, wasn't it?
Was, but it's a short period of time. It didn't really start until after the Second World War.
Yeah.
Or it started during the Second World War, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, Robert.
Unions, this is my farmer independent coming through. When I was teaching in my first job in Iowa, I went home from my mother's surgery. I came back and I was docked because that wasn't my immediate family. If I lived with my parents, this other guy did, his mother lived with him, that was his family. So I was docked 3 days pay. And I said, I don't need unions that treat me like that. So they took my union dues, but I never participated. But, it can be good. And then when I was cut in St. Paul's schools, it was for affirmative action, and the person who got to stay never came to work if he didn't want to and never called in. And yet I was a dedicated teacher, and I got kicked out because I was white. So there's different sides to that whole story. And so that's me.
Howard, You gonna say something?
Yeah, then corporations find that they can cut our overhead, which is employees, to make it more profitable. An example, McDonald's with kiosks to order your food. So they don't have to have somebody at the, as many people at the register. And they don't pay any benefits.
But you can argue the other side of that story, that at least when you place the order, it's placed correctly. I don't mean to talk bad about it, but how many times have you gone into a place like that and dealt with someone that really doesn't even know how to find the buttons, let alone give you the correct change?
Right.
So if you put it in yourself, at least you have a better feel that it's in there more accurately.
Or if it's not, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Then when you tell them I have the change, they're lost because they don't know to give you another dollar back because you gave them the change to make
Yeah.
up.
But
So,
that-
excuse me, Chuck, go
Well,
ahead.
I would tend to blame that, I think, more on the school system, because they didn't learn arithmetic like we did. They're all punching calculators, or they're not doing it in their heads like we did when we were kids. We knew how to make change quickly, and they don't have that anymore. And I don't think that's just the product of that the kids are stupid. It's just that they're always relying on the calculators, which we never had.
So if you asked Harry Linroth, or Darrell Anderson, or Ed Berggren, or Dan Rigwalski, tell me about your years at 3M. They would talk about Mother Mine, with whom there was a covenant. Okay? If you ask Richard Polly, or Carmen Reinhardt's husband Ernie Reinhardt, about 3M, they would tell you that Mother Mining is a thing of the past. And that at some point, a new CEO came into 3M, and the word was sent to every department, you're going to cut 10% of your payroll. It's up to you how you cut 10%. Doesn't matter if you're making money, losing money, you're going to cut 10%. And so that idea of Mother Mining was no more. Okay?
Almost every factory that I visit, foreign factory, doesn't matter if it's China or Russia or anywhere, you're going to find products from 3M.
Is that right?
And when you tell them what that means, what does 3M mean to you? What does that mean? Well, it's 3M. It's, it's global. And it's Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. And there, where's Minnesota?
Well, I heard a while back that you're never more than 10 feet away from a 3M product.
So I was in Bogota, Colombia one day, and we were driving down the street, and here's this factory, 3M, pasted on the side of it. And I thought, I wonder if the guys in St. Paul know about that. And who knew what they were making?
Yeah. Yeah, what don't they make?
Yeah.
So, there is in our day a shift with regard to risk from government and large corporations to the individual. Because pensions, unless you're a public servant, are increasingly a thing of the past, right? Now it's your retirement funds, so that they're portable. And one of the reasons that they're portable is because there is no assumption of lifetime employment anymore, and it's unfair that you or I should work for a company for 4.5 years and then be let go or have to look for another job when you vest after 5 years, right? So let's make things portable. But the risk has shifted from larger corporations and the government to individuals. True or false?
True.
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 Okay.
We're riding the markets with everybody, well, not with everybody else, because there are still government pensions and there are still,
Yeah.
But those pensions are invested in markets. Government pensions are invested.
That is true. That is true. My assumption is that their pool is,
In 2008, my state pension lost half of its value because of the
just
market.
like we did,
Mhm.
as individuals.
Yep.
And
Now,
that-
it wasn't that.
But it's also gained most of it back.
That's why, that's a relatively late development. I have a brother who is 64, or gonna be 64, has a real pension. It only goes up. I have a younger brother who is still employed by the CIA, although I'm not supposed to say that out loud. He's an accountant.
I know
Okay.
that now.
He's not, he's not, and we're taped 24 hours a day. But he has the kind of pension you're describing. True or false? This shift in risk is in the 98% that are below the top 2%
True,
in the employment.
very
field,
true.
right? So this is one thing that's happening in this economy, locally, nationally, and globally, right? So the guy that gets fired at 3M, at CBS, still walks away with tens of millions of dollars.
The golden parachute.
The golden parachute, right?
Well, it's,
I'm not sure that that's global though, because there are countries like, well, let's look at medical insurance. There are countries like France, where, and in Europe, where everyone does have some form of medical insurance, which is, that's one of the things that bankrupts people, is their medical insurance. So I'm not sure that that's as global.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's, again, we're talking about perspective. You're talking about France, okay? If you read one of the scariest books I've read in a long time, I don't remember the title of it, about a guy named Browder who tries to do business with the Russians. And they're stealing money from him, and he tries to get it back, and a price is put on his head by the Russians. I mean, it's a true story, a scary book. Have you read that, Dan?
Maybe you should.
What? What?
Maybe you should read that one.
They really know how to drag their feet when it comes time to pay.
In some countries, it is, as you say, there's a more egalitarian relationship, but in others, even worse.
Well, even a
No.
safe, in some countries, there's a safety net.
Howard?
in a little bit of, this is a little bit off the track possibly, but, there was a guy on the news that said that hearing aids for people our age is the third most costly item they can buy in their lifetime. It's their house, their car, and their hearing aid.
Really?
$4,000 or
$4,700.
$4,700.
I saw it today too, this morning.
Is that taking care of our?
And 2/3 of the people over 70 need them. And what did it say? Only 20% of those people actually have them.
Yeah.
And most people who have them don't like them.
Or they don't use them because they don't work right.
Yeah. And yet we have Starkey here in the Twin Cities, one of the biggest hearing aid companies in the world, and they were accused of some fraud
Yeah.
not long ago.
Well, it was their board of directors.
Yeah.
2 guys.
I don't know though.
Yeah, it wasn't him himself.
Discussion questions. Number 2, at the end of chapter 2, American culture generally encourages charity to the poor, but keeping as low as possible the expenditure of tax funds for the poor. How does that square with what the prophet would have to say? Take care of the poor, but we're not going to we're going to spend as little tax money for the poor as possible. Is there a war on poverty, or is there a war on the poor? That'd be another way to ask that question. Should it be our responsibility to feed the children at John Glenn School? I mean, this little congregation, 80-some families at the last community market, 40 backpacks or something like that going out every week. Is that our job? Why isn't the government doing that? Well, who's the government? Us. And the people we elect. Right? Maybe this gets at the question that you...
Sorry, Sue. And government is providing breakfast and lunches for the kids at school. Or, yeah, we for our tax dollars.
Free and reduced.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? That we generally encourage charity to the poor. We're going to make our toy drive on Channel 11. You know, Toys for Tots or
Do you read
whatever it is.
Do you read Ed Lauderman's in the Pioneer Press on Sundays? He's an economist.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Oh, you should. He's great. I love that guy. And he does a column every week on and he kind of comes from a farmer's point of view. I just love that guy. And he did a whole series on just that question. So when the government buys meals for children, they don't do it directly. They do it in the way of subsidies to farmers. Okay, so it gets really, really complicated, and Ed hates that.
Then how do you educate the poor guy that's has to leave at night because he can't pay rent, and leave behind stuff that he purchased because he doesn't have time to get it out or the means to get it out. How do you educate him then to better manage what Lily has?
Marlis?
I taught for quite a few years, and I saw the kids take their hot lunch that was really good for them, and scatter it into the garbage can. So, how you get them to eat what's good for them.
I mean, we'd be pretty sad if we thought that backpacks were going home and not being used, right? So, do we cut back on the number of backpacks? Do we follow the backpacks home? Do we just figure that's the cost of doing business? You know, somebody who's dealing with welfare has a caseworker. That caseworker has way too many cases. Right? Way too many cases. But what does it cost to hire another caseworker? Right? And every dollar that pays the caseworker doesn't buy food. Right?
Here's the problem.
Sylvia?
But I understand what Marlis is saying, and I see that, and we've seen that at the shelter, where we provide this food, looks good, and they take their trays and dump it in the trash, and, milk and everything, which just gets very frustrating. But also, when I look at the jet fuel program, and yes, we start with maybe 45, we ended with 12. Those 12 people were on from the beginning, from start to finish. So there's a number of people that truly need this. And I don't think for them that it would be wasted. And they're probably not the kids that are throwing theirs into the trash. And you see that, I mean, I volunteer at the food shelf. These people need, and they will come through and they will say, okay, I say, you can have 5 of these. I don't want 5 of those. I don't want to throw it away. I cannot use it. And they are so thankful. So I just, I always say, I'm glad I'm not the judge.
So we, in the food industry, we discuss what you just said a lot about what that lady said. I don't want to throw it away because we've set up these programs with code dates.
Right.
And code dates are not always accurate. It's estimated that almost 30% of food that's produced in the United States goes to waste because of that issue. And people look at something and they say,
Because of the code date, or
Yeah.
because she doesn't want?
well, but the lady's concern is, I don't want 5 of those, I only need 3.
Yeah.
And if I don't consume those 5, it's gonna go out of date,
Sure.
so I can't use it. So we're really wrestling with that all the time.
Well, and I think going to change that a little bit too, with the requirements of that. But, I mean, and that is an issue, and which is one of the reasons why then this next month, for the food shelf, they get what is called food rescue. They have someone who goes around to all the grocery stores, et cetera, picks up, brings it to the food shelf. It has to be date checked, and there is a requirement. Now, the food shelf for some items, you know, it can be 6 months, some it can be a year, depending on what it is, and they can still put it on. We still have people that will come through, look at the date, and if it isn't, you know, very current, they won't take it. Plus, they, I don't know what I was going to say about it, but, one of the things we're going to do with Check Fuel is to take for next month 1 pallet of this for food rescue and let the kids go through it. You still have to date check it. You still have to decide what is good or what is bad. But when people come through the food shop, a lot of what they get is food rescue.
So we're working with food companies to try to get them to estimate their shelf life. And that's really what it is. If you look at the process, you look at the food type, you look at the packaging type, you look at the distribution chain, and you have to do a risk assessment. I mean, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And then we try to help them estimate, okay,
So good.
this is best if used by.
Right.
Okay, well, there are dairy products now that have a shelf life, well, I mean, but that's a special process, you know. But most dairy products, 18 days. Okay. Well, the store managers, they're gonna start picking stuff off the shelf if they're within 4 days of that date. Well, it can go to food rescue. Well, so the idea is, well, if we can get this distributed and out to the public within that 4-day period, it's still okay as long as we haven't temperature abused it. So it's a real fight.
And it'll be interesting to see how it goes over at the community market, to see what people have to say about it. When we do the jet fuel, I mean, ours are date right. I mean, we never put anything in those backpacks that aren't date right, so.
Well, that's the only assurance of that.
One of the things that Luther was really on the cutting edge about is if people are in need, God does not care who helps them. What God cares is that they get the help that they need. And God does not care if they're helped because someone is twisting another person's back and saying, you help them, or if it's out of the goodness of somebody's heart. What matters to God, and that's sort of related to the sermon this morning, what matters to God is that the poor, that somebody in need, gets the help that they need. Who pays? We might be concerned about that, and rightly so, because we're called to be faithful stewards as individuals and as citizens, part of a government, right? So your question, or your comment early on about, you know, where does it go, this aid, whether it's local or national or global, we are rightly concerned, obviously. I mean, there's no argument there about people in need. God is not concerned with how or why they are helped. He's concerned that they do receive the help that they need. That's the message of the prophets. Okay? That's the biblical message. And Luther really hit that hard.
And with the food shelf thing, I think, you know, even though 30% of the food in this country is wasted, if you're getting the food in front of those people and they take it home, they have the food and it's up to them to cook it right away or use it, and if they have to throw it away, at least they have it.
Right.
You know, we can't really tell them how they can prepare it, how long they'll sit, but at least...
Well, that was a push, is to, for the jet fuel pack, was to teach the kids on how to use the foods that they were given.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing.
Or how to preserve the food. I was at Nolan's weeks back, and there was a garbage can in the produce area when I was going through one day, and they were literally dumping in things that were bad, and they were pouring in these blueberries, and I thought, oh, if that was me, I mean, if they were 50 cents a container and were going bad, I would have brought them home, picked out the bad ones and frozen.
Yeah.
But they were just pitching them, and I thought, geez, I'll take the whole barrel and put it in my compost pit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was just food going in the garbage, and that just bothers me, that there's ways to preserve that food.
And that's why I think taking it to the community market and letting the kids actually see that and say, this is what the grocery store would get through away.
Yeah.
Actually, they threw it away, and the kids could say, wow, you know, there's those blueberries I'm gonna take home.
Yep. And if you can't eat them today, you could put them on a cookie sheet and freeze them.
Or pie.
Yeah. But one of the most powerful things about wasting food is that commercial with the strawberries. If you remember seeing that one, it was on a while back, where the strawberries start in the field,
Yeah.
and then they go to the plant, and then you get packaged, and then they show them in the warehouse and on the truck and this and that, and then they give them a grocery cart, and they bring them home, put them in the fridge, and then they open the fridge a week later, and they're all moldy, and they went right in the garbage. And all this work all the way through to get the strawberries into that refrigerator, and then they sat there for a week and got moldy and ended up in the garbage. And that was about the 30% or whatever that we throw away.
Well, we look at, you know, from our processing side of the industry, we look at it to the end of the grocery store. We don't go beyond that.
Yeah.
We don't keep track of what's going on.
Yeah. Because I know in restaurants, I mean, today's prime rib will, if what's left over, we can be somewhere else, beef and barley soup. You know, they're very efficient, I think, at utilizing food in a restaurant. So today's bread is not worth it, you know.
So, if there are people in need, are we called to help the families who have students at John Glenn School? Or should we be sending money to North Carolina? Or to Tanzania, where our St. Paul Area Synod has a partnership with the Tanzanian Church? How, with the limited resources that we have, where do we choose to allocate, or for whom do we choose to allocate those limited resources? When Kent Eklund comes on the 21st, that's one of the things that he'll talk about right away. the allocation of limited resources. I mean, that ties in with the common good, right? The other question is something that I need to pay attention to. When Michelle and I were up at Lucin over Labor Day weekend, we had quite a conversation one night with my brother and his family. About helping people. And I'm very big on, I want to help one individual. I'd like to make a difference in one life. Now, I don't know if that's because I think that's manageable, or possible, or convenient. Other people, they're not interested in meeting a poor person, but they are interested in moving corporations or government agencies to help poor people. And it is something, thinking about, I don't know who you think I preach for on Sunday mornings, but the first person I preach for is, what's the text saying to me in terms of both comfort and challenge? And so, I mean, I wasn't kidding today when I said, just if you'll permit me a moment of personal confession, I'd rather talk about politics than about being the church. Now, on the other hand, I'd rather talk about trying to help an individual rather than trying to do something on a grander scale. But I've got colleagues in parishes right around here who, they don't know any poor people, but they're lobbying every spring that our legislature in the state of Minnesota should be doing more for the poor. Well, in the sermon today, it seems to me, and it was in the sermon because I think it was in the text, we have different callings, and we don't all operate the same way. There's a man casting out demons. He's not one of us. Jesus says, more power to it, right? That's his calling. You worry about yours. So, maybe a takeaway for us is to recognize that we are called to help people in need. For some of us, that might mean working with an individual or some individuals. Sylvia more than I, was a part of the Starfish ministry here. How long ago was that? And that was accepting the challenge of 3 people in our congregation working with one family to help them in terms of their budgeting and their parenting and their work and their planning for the future. Let's make a difference in one family. But, you know, you listen to Dan Erickson talk about what you're doing in your industry, and that's, in some ways, a more corporate or more national or global focus. Well, isn't that how God calls us, each of us? So, what's your calling? What's my calling? To work with an individual, to try and make a difference in a small number or a small community, or on a bigger scale, you know. I mean, maybe bread for the world is something that, you know, we want to look at. Or Second Harvest, a little bit more local than bread for the world, you know. Or the ELCA World Hunger Appeal. I mean, there are all kinds of ways. We've got a member who volunteers with the American Red Cross, and when there's a catastrophe, she goes to work. Everybody's got their thing, right? And maybe you're settled in yours, and maybe you're looking for something. And if you're looking for something, try something. Sylvia?
It works together, because it takes the individual to let the corporation know. I mean, Dan has been doing a lot with that, but where was the individual who didn't go to the government when we have how many tens of homeless people? I mean, why are we waiting until the snows fall before we try to find them? I mean, somehow, these corporations don't see that unless they've got the individual to come and tell them.
It's quite a lot of fun to stand on the neck of a CEO.
I bet.
Can we get back to James real quick?
Sure.
Before we end up?
Yep, we got
So,
2 minutes.
so his statement here, I can see why Luther would have an issue.
Sure.
To keep oneself unstained by the world when we are born to that stain.
Uh-huh.
So he would, yeah, I could see why he wouldn't, but then, that's why we call this an epistle and not the gospel.
Yeah, and, I mean, it all needs to work together to keep oneself unstained by the world. Does that mean,
But we're born to the stain. We're born to sin.
right, but today in a baptism, that stain was dealt with, and as a child of God, we're called to move in a new direction and to struggle against that stain, right? I mean, just because your girls didn't know how to share when they were born, you didn't leave them like that, right? So, are we stained by the world? Who gives a rip about somebody in need unless I'm the one in need? That's the stain, right? Well, we know differently, right? What's your calling? What's my calling in that regard? We'll talk some more next week about similar issues. And maybe we'll even watch a DVD instead of taking my word for it, right?